At 11:15 p.m. in northern Japan, what sounded like a powerful but ordinary earthquake suddenly triggered a nationwide megaquake advisory, the first of its kind since 2022. More than 90,000 residents evacuated as the threat of an even larger tsunami-spawning rupture loomed over Aomori's dark coastlines. Seismic experts warn the pattern matches the days before Japan's greatest modern disaster. But this alert, issued under new, untested criteria, has left officials and families fearing a catastrophic repeat. So what is about to happen next? Sirens cut through the cold December air as the ground convulses under Aomori's coastal neighborhoods. The shaking is relentless. Windows rattle, dishes crash to the floor, and in the span of a single minute, the familiar world fractures. On the main road out of Hachinohe, cars jam every lane as families abandon their homes, headlights weaving through a haze of dust and panic. Cracks split the asphalt, swallowing bicycle tires and sending a delivery van teetering onto its side. Parents shout for missing children, their voices barely rising above the wail of emergency alerts echoing from every phone, radio, and loudspeaker. A magnitude 7.6 earthquake, centered deep beneath the Pacific at 54 kilometers, has just torn through the night. Within minutes, the Japan Meteorological Agency issues a tsunami advisory, warning that waves could reach up to 2 feet. In the darkness, people scramble for higher ground, some clutching emergency bags packed after years of drills, others barefoot and dazed, trailing behind neighbors who know the evacuation routes by heart. Tsunami waves arrive at the fishing port. The first wave, 60 centimeters and just under 2 feet, rolls in, swirling boats against the concrete piers. It is not a wall of water, but it is enough to sweep away anything left on the dock. Across Aomori and into Hokkaido, evacuation orders ripple outward. 90,000 residents are told to leave immediately. Shelters fill with old men in pajamas, mothers holding babies, teenagers frantically texting relatives. The city's power flickers, then fails. Without streetlights, the only illumination comes from the red glow of hazard flares and the blue-white beams of emergency workers' flashlights. On the outskirts, hospital staff form a human chain to move patients onto buses, their stretchers bouncing over broken pavement. In the chaos, every second feels stretched thin. Some families are separated as fathers double back for a missing pet or a forgotten medication. Others squeeze together in the stairwells of reinforced evacuation towers, listening as the building groans with each aftershock. For many, this is a nightmare they have rehearsed but hoped never to live, a drill turned real. The memory of 2011 is sharp. Grandparents whisper stories of the black water that came without warning, of friends who never returned. Tonight, every rumble underfoot feels like a countdown. By midnight, the official count is already climbing, dozens injured, roads impassable, and the threat of something even larger hanging over the region. Outside, the sea is eerily calm, but the fear is electric. No one knows if this is the main event or just the beginning. In every shelter, people grip their phones, waiting for the next alert, the next siren, the next order to run. The Japan Meteorological Agency's headquarters glowed with activity as midnight approached. Phones rang with calls from local governments, while analysts pored over seismic data streaming in from hundreds of sensors. At 12:23 a.m., the agency issued a bulletin that would reverberate across the entire country, a special advisory warning of the possibility of a magnitude 8.0 or greater earthquake along the Japan Trench or Kuril Trench in the coming week. This was not a routine aftershock notice. It was the first time since the system's creation in 2022 that such an alert had been triggered for northern Japan. The advisory covered 182 municipalities, stretching from Hokkaido down through Aomori and Iwate, all the way to Chiba. Inside the briefing room, a Japan Meteorological Agency spokesperson faced the cameras, his voice measured but grave. He explained that the probability of a megaquake had risen, still low, about 1% for the next 7 days, but high enough to demand special vigilance. This was not a prediction, he stressed, but a calculated warning based on statistical models refined after the 2011 disaster. The message was clear: keep emergency kits close, sleep in day clothes, and be ready to move at a moment's notice. Every family was urged to review evacuation routes, secure heavy furniture, and check on neighbors who might need help if a larger quake struck. The advisory system itself was born from the scars of 2011. After that catastrophe, government scientists and policymakers spent years debating how to communicate rare but deadly risks. The result was a new protocol, one that would avoid false alarms but also ensure no one was caught off guard by a once-in-a-generation event. When the December 8th quake struck, the algorithms flagged the elevated risk almost immediately. Within minutes, the advisory was drafted, reviewed, and pushed out through the country's emergency networks. Cell phone alerts buzzed in the hands of millions. Television and radio stations broke into regular programming to relay the agency's message. Local officials updated digital signboards and loudspeakers in every coastal town. The public response was calm but tense. Shelters remained open, and many families chose to stay in evacuation centers overnight, unwilling to risk returning home while the advisory was in effect. For many, the advisory felt like a line drawn between normal life and the edge of disaster. In the words of one Japan Meteorological Agency official, even a 1% chance is too much when you are talking about an earthquake that could take hundreds of thousands of lives. The government's own worst-case scenario models for a megaquake in this region estimate up to 199,000 deaths. Those numbers were never spoken aloud in the advisory, but everyone knew what was at stake. The advisory remained in place for a full week. Every aftershock, every tremor, sent a ripple of anxiety through the shelters and emergency command centers. When the agency lifted the advisory on December 16th, it was with a cautious reminder. The risk had diminished, but not disappeared. People were urged to stay prepared, to keep their go-bags packed, and to remember that in Japan, the next disaster is always a matter of when, not if. March 11th, 2011. At 2:46 in the afternoon, a magnitude 9 earthquake ruptured the seabed off Japan's northeast coast. The shaking lasted more than 6 minutes, long enough for office towers in Tokyo to sway, for train lines to grind to a halt, for families in Miyagi and Iwate to feel the floor roll beneath them and know instantly that this was not routine. Sirens sounded, but the real warning came in the form of a wall of water. In places like Rikuzentakata and Minamisanriku, the tsunami reached over 40 meters high, swallowing entire neighborhoods and carrying fishing boats miles inland. The force of the wave bulldozed concrete, twisted steel, and left behind fields of shattered wood and mud. Official counts would later list nearly 18,000 dead or missing. More than 470,000 people lost their homes in the first weeks, crowding into school gyms and public halls, sleeping on cardboard, clutching photographs of loved ones who never made it to safety. In the chaos, families were separated for days, parents searching shelters for children, elderly evacuees waiting for news that never came. Across the landscape, cars and debris hung in the tops of trees, and the coastline itself was redrawn by the sea. The disaster did not end with the water's retreat. At Fukushima Daiichi, the tsunami overtopped seawalls and flooded backup generators, leading to core meltdowns in 3 nuclear reactors. Plumes of radioactive steam rose over the plant, and entire towns were evacuated, first for days, then for years. Some would never return. Government maps showed the evacuation zone as a red circle, but on the ground, it meant checkpoints, abandoned schools, and empty streets where wild boars roamed. For survivors, the numbers are burned into memory. 18,000 lives lost, 470,000 displaced, more than 40 meters of water in places that had never seen a wave so high. One woman from Kesanuma recalls clinging to a third-floor railing as the black water surged past, hearing the sound of houses splintering all around her. She says, "You think you have time, but the sea is faster than you can run." The scars of 2011 are everywhere, in rebuilt seawalls, in annual evacuation drills, and in the way every tremor, no matter how small, brings back the taste of fear. The memory of that day is not distant history. It is the reason why, when the ground shakes and the sirens start, people in northern Japan do not wait for a second warning. Offshore, a silent army of sensors now patrols the deep. After 2011, Japan rewired its entire approach to disaster detection, laying hundreds of kilometers of fiber optic cable along the seafloor. The S-net and DO-net networks, stretching from the cold waters off Hokkaido down to the Nankai Trough, form a real-time shield, with 150 S-net nodes spaced as close as 20 kilometers apart, each bristling with broadband seismometers and pressure gauges sensitive enough to register a single centimeter of ocean floor movement. When the December quake struck, these sensors captured the first jolt, relaying data to the Japan Meteorological Agency in under 10 seconds. Dr. Kenji Satake, a leading seismologist at the University of Tokyo, describes the system as a window into the trench's hidden mechanics. He explains how, before 2011, most tsunami warnings relied on coastal tide gauges and land-based seismometers. By the time a signal reached shore, precious minutes had already slipped away. Now, with pressure sensors anchored at depths of nearly 7,000 meters, even the faintest uplift or subsidence along the fault is recorded instantly. Satake points to the network's ability to detect slow slip events, subtle shifts, sometimes just 2 or 3 centimeters over days, that can hint at locked sections of the plate boundary straining toward failure. The real breakthrough came from drilling directly into the Japan Trench after 2011. Scientists recovered thin layers of smectite clay, so weak and slippery that when the fault finally ruptured, the plates slid past each other almost without friction. This discovery explained how the 2011 quake's rupture ran all the way to the seafloor, unleashing a tsunami no wall could hold back. Today, Satake and his colleagues use these findings to map the fault zone in forensic detail. They distinguish creeping segments, where the plates slide quietly and release stress, from locked patches, where strain builds like a wound spring. It is the locked zones that worry them most. With S-net and DO-net, they can spot subtle deformation in these areas, but the system has limits. It can show where stress is accumulating, not when it will let go. Satake says, "We can see the cable tightening, but we don't hear the snap until it happens." Even with this technological leap, the warning window remains brutally short. The sensors might buy a few extra minutes, but for families on the coast, survival still depends on readiness and speed. The science can reveal patterns, uplift, locked zones, creeping faults, but it cannot promise certainty. In the end, the deep-sea network is both a marvel and a reminder. Nature's countdown is always running, and the best defense is to act before the alarm finishes sounding. Alarms pierce the quiet of the Miyagi family's home, phones vibrating, television flashing, a robotic voice repeating the order to evacuate. In a practiced blur, Yuki grabs the emergency backpack, Kenji checks the door, and his mother-in-law steps into rubber boots. Their hands tremble, but the routine is automatic, shaped by years of drills after 2011. Outside, the street is already alive. Neighbors spill out, some half-dressed, others jogging toward the hillside evacuation point. The J-alert system has triggered, and less than a minute separates the first tremor from the rush of feet. In Miyagi, speed is survival. The youngest, Rina, clings to her mother as they pass the blue and white tsunami sign. Sirens wail, feet pound the pavement, and a neighbor shouts for a missing boy, last seen running back for his phone. No one turns back. The rule is simple: get to high ground, fast. At the base of the hill, The crowd thickens. The evacuation tower, built after tragedy, fills with elderly residents and children. Volunteers in yellow vests direct people up the stairs, counting heads and marking clipboards. Kenji's mother-in-law hesitates, glancing at the sea, but Kenji keeps her moving. Hesitation cost lives in 2011. The family climbs, breathless, hearts racing, until they reach the third floor. The coastline is a shadow against the night, lit only by the emergency generator and scattered flashlights below. In Kadena Air Base Control Room, Mayor Masashi Toguchi tracks the evacuation. Months earlier, the town rehearsed a full-scale drill, opening base gates to funnel residents to safety. Tonight, the plan unfolds for real. The mayor's radio crackles, roads clear, routes holding, no injuries yet. The system is not perfect, traffic jams, forgotten medicine, a missing pet, but the drills and alerts have bought precious minutes. Every second matters, and tonight those seconds are being used well. For the Miyagi family, and thousands more, the line between safety and survival is measured in footsteps. Technology helps, but survival still depends on listening for the siren, trusting the drill, and never waiting for a second warning. Concrete walls now line hundreds of miles along Japan's northeastern coast, their jagged forms rising up to 15 meters above the old sea level. In the years after 2011, the government poured billions into these defenses, massive breakwaters, levees, and elevated roads meant to buy precious minutes when the next wave comes. Some towns rebuilt behind barriers so tall they block the view of the ocean, trading open horizons for a sense of safety. But the question lingers in every coastal meeting: are these walls strong enough, or just the illusion of control? Dr. Kostas Sinalakis, a tsunami scientist who has studied both the physics and the aftermath of these disasters, warns that no wall is absolute. He points to the 2011 Tohoku tsunami, when waves soared well above design limits, overtopping defenses that were supposed to hold back the sea. A seawall buys you minutes, not miracles, he says. Even the tallest structures are vulnerable if the earthquake is big enough, or if the wave energy is focused by the shape of a bay. In places like Iwate, where the coastline funnels water into narrow inlets, the run-up can double or triple what models predict. Japan's investment in concrete is staggering. Some estimates put the cost of defenses built after 2011 at over $10 billion. Yet engineers still debate how high is high enough, and whether resources should shift to evacuation drills and vertical shelters instead. Critics worry about a false sense of security. If people trust the walls too much, they might hesitate when alarms sound, losing the only thing that truly matters: time. The threat does not end at Japan's shore. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center routinely runs simulations for megaquakes along the Japan Trench. Their models show that a full-length rupture could send meter-high waves racing across the ocean, reaching Hawaii in less than 8 hours. In 2011, the waves that struck Hilo and Honolulu lifted boats from their moorings and flooded harbors, even after traveling thousands of kilometers. The basin itself is a giant amplifier. What starts as devastation for one nation can become a test for defenses half a world away. Dr. Sinalakis cautions that the next megaquake will not respect any boundary, concrete or political. He says we can build walls, but the ocean remembers its own history. The real question is whether we do, too. Japan's shores remain on constant alert, where every seismic tremor tests the nation's hard-earned vigilance. As ocean sensors map unseen threats and evacuation drills become part of daily life, the line between preparedness and fear grows ever thinner. In this era of accelerating extremes, readiness isn't just policy, it's survival. The next warning could come at any moment. Stay alert and share your thoughts below. California's coast just rose 6 feet overnight, and scientists are shocked by the hidden void they discovered, because what happened along hundreds of miles of coastline defies every law of geology and suggests something is deliberately hollowing out California from beneath. Picture beaches that were at sea level yesterday, now sitting 6 feet above the waves, harbors stranded high and dry, and marine life gasping on what used to be the ocean floor. This isn't erosion or normal coastal change. This is the land itself rising like a massive elevator, and it happened so fast that tide pools were left behind by the retreating sea. But here's what has geologists in complete panic. Deep underground scans reveal a massive geometric void, a hollow space the size of several city blocks that appeared beneath the coastline at the exact moment the land started rising. This void isn't natural. It's perfectly shaped, almost artificial, and it's filled with a substance that doesn't match any known geological material. Even more terrifying, similar voids are now appearing along fault lines throughout California, each one causing the ground above to buckle and rise. GPS stations that measure ground movement with millimeter precision are showing readings that should be impossible. Vertical displacement that normally takes thousands of years compressed into a single night. Is this the result of some unknown geological process? Or has something been deliberately excavating California from below? And could the entire state be about to collapse into these mysterious underground chambers? Along the entire California coastline, change is usually measured in fractions of an inch. Over decades, the land might rise or fall by a few millimeters each year, so slowly that only scientists with precise instruments can even notice. The Pacific and North American plates grind past each other beneath the state, building up strain along faults like the San Andreas and the Cascadia subduction zone. In the north, the Cascadia zone stretches from Cape Mendocino all the way to Vancouver Island, where the oceanic plate dives beneath the continent. This system is capable of unleashing massive earthquakes, but even then, the results rarely match what just happened. For most of recorded history, tectonic uplift along the California coast has been a gradual process. The coastal ranges have climbed over millions of years, but the annual increase is barely the width of a fingernail. In places like Santa Barbara or Crescent City, GPS stations have tracked the ground rising at rates of 1 to 3 millimeters per year, so slow that a century yields less than 4 inches. Even the most dramatic events on record, like the 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan, lifted sections of shoreline by about 5 feet, but only in a few hours, and only across a limited stretch of coast. In California, scientists expect the opposite from the next big Cascadia quake: sudden drops, not rises. Models predict that a magnitude 9 event could cause the northern coast to sink by as much as 6 feet in a matter of minutes, flooding entire neighborhoods and erasing tide lines that had stood for generations. Dr. Marin Govorchin, the state's geology director, has spent years preparing for the day when the land might suddenly subside. She points to ghost forests in the Pacific Northwest, stands of dead trees where the ground dropped and salt water rushed in centuries ago. She says, "We plan for earthquakes that lower the coast, not lift it." If the land truly jumped 6 feet upward, that is not in any model we have ever run. The normal mechanisms simply do not allow for it. Volcanic inflation can push up the ground, but only by inches a year, and only in places with active magma chambers. Isostatic rebound, where the Earth rises after losing the weight of ice or water, happens over centuries, not hours. Even the most powerful human activities, pumping oil or injecting water underground, can shift the land by a few centimeters, never by feet, and never across hundreds of miles at once. The coastline, then, is a record of patience. It bends to the will of slow-moving plates, to the weight of tides and the pull of gravity, rarely giving up more than a sliver of ground in a single lifetime. That is why the sudden 6-foot rise is so hard to accept. It is not just unprecedented, it is impossible within the rules geologists have trusted for generations. The instruments that normally track the tiniest changes are now reporting a leap that should have taken thousands of years. The gap between what is expected and what happened is not just a matter of scale. It is a challenge to the very foundation of Earth science. Dr. Marin Gavorchan watched the data feeds as the first GNSS readings arrived. Every station from Mendocino to Santa Barbara reported a 6-foot vertical jump. No slope, no warning, just a sudden, clean rise. The numbers were too stark to accept at face value. Standard protocol called for a full audit. The team pulled raw Rhinex files, ran them through independent processors, and checked antenna logs for interference or timing errors. Each check returned the same result: a flat line, then a vertical cliff at precisely 12:04 a.m. No atmospheric anomalies, no solar storms, no missing data. The signal was unmistakable. INSAR satellite images came next. Normally used to track slow fault movements or volcanic swelling, these interferograms now showed a dense band of concentric fringes along the coast. Each fringe marked centimeters of motion, but here the pattern was so tightly packed that phase unwrapping algorithms struggled to keep up.